Okay, in this last scenario, we're going to go ahead and look at a little bit more complicated situation. So we're going to look at a situation where we have two things changing. Okay, so let's start with here the market for PCs, personal computers. Okay, so we get the market for PCs, and then we're going to look at two changes happening in this market, and we're going to see that the analysis is a little bit more difficult when we have that, but not so much so. Okay, so we got our price and our quantity. And then we can just draw a market. Let's draw a market something like this. Hopefully I left enough room. Something like this. And then we can label our equilibrium. Okay, so that's the same in every case. We just go ahead and start. If you take upper level classes, if you take more classes in economics, you might see going a little bit deeper with this, but for our purposes as a macro class, our understanding right now is enough. Okay, so our scenario number 3 has two things happening. The first thing that's going to happen for this market is we got an improvement in production technology. So this has totally happened. Production technology in the computer world has gotten better and better and better and better. Costs for making all the components have fallen. So over time, chips and screens and everything else and memory has just gotten cheaper and smaller and cheaper and smaller and cheaper and smaller. Okay, so the production technology is getting better and better. So that's one part. But the second part is there's more alternative products that people use for some of the uses that they used to use a PC for. So, for example, especially many young people or people who don't have, it depends on what they're producing. I use a computer a lot, although I use a computer that's kind of a combination of a tablet and a computer. But lots of people use their phone for most things, and they actually don't touch their computer much unless they have to do a lot of word processing or Excel or use kind of high-powered programs, right? So the availability of substitutes. We got more substitutes available, and the substitutes are getting better. Okay, so got availability of substitutes. So I'm talking here about mobile phones, so smartphones, and tablets. Okay, so the tablets and the smartphones are getting better and better, and they have more and more functionality and less. So there's more and more things you can do on them, and you don't need to use a PC. All right, so let's go through now. We have our two scenarios. The first one is going to affect supply or demand. So sure, you should have thought it's going to affect supply. This is going to lower. This lowers production costs. Okay, so we get lower production costs. So that is going to, and then you got to think the direction. So that should increase supply. So even if you keep the price the same, the firm can now make more profits at the same price. So they're going to be more willing to supply there. Okay, and close substitutes are going to affect our demand, we should think, right? It makes this product a little bit less attractive because they need it less because they have other choices. Okay, so this is the PCs less needed. Some people actually maybe don't need a PC at all unless they have to, depending on what kind of stuff they have to do on it. And so this is going to, as you can guess, this is going to decrease demand. All right, so now we have these two scenarios and we have to figure out what's going to happen. Let me go ahead and draw one of them on there, and then I'll talk about what that means for the second one. So let's go ahead and put our increase in supply. Remember, increase in supply, we're not talking vertical because we're talking horizontal here. So we're saying at the same price, they're willing to produce more. All right, so let me go ahead and draw the supply on here. Something like maybe like this, okay? So the production technology increases the supply. And now when we go to draw our demand, we have to make some decisions. We have to think about it a little bit. Okay. So you might be able to guess already, but our demand is going to decrease. Now let's suppose it just decreases a little bit. So if it decreases a little bit, what happens? Well, if it decreases a little bit, then what happens? Where's our new equilibrium? So our new equilibrium is here, and we find our price is lower for sure, but our quantity in the market is actually more. So even though they're less willing to buy computers are so much cheaper that they still buy more than they did before. Okay, so that's a possibility. But then we can also, so that's one possibility. We can look at this. In this case, we end up with our price is lower, but our quantity actually becomes higher. So that's one possibility. But then some of you might say, well, there's another possibility. So I'm actually going to write down the first one. So the first one is, well, our price is lower. And we also got our quantity to go up. Now, is it possible that we would end up with our quantity to go down? Well, sure. So what it really depends on is the relative shift. So which shift is bigger? When we have these two kind of shifts like this going on, it depends on which one's bigger. So let's suppose the demand decrease was humongous. Okay, something like this compared to the supply. Well, now at our equilibrium here, we end up with still a lower price, but we end up also with a lower quantity, right? So these are actually both possible. This can go up or down. We're not sure. So this is, we can maybe write something here. The quantity will go up if the, this would be if the shift in supply, oops, bad, shift in supply is greater, and then the quantity will go down if the shift in demand is greater. Now it's not always that it will be the prices for sure. It also can, there's also scenarios where we'll know the quantity for sure. For example, if this had been an increase in demand and an increase in supply, then we would know for sure that the quantity is going to go up, but we wouldn't be sure what's going to happen to the price. So this is the typical what happens when we have two things moving at once, is we can be sure about one thing, but we can't, one of the factors, price or quantity, but we can't be sure about the other. Okay, so go ahead and take a look at this, and let me know if you have any questions in the forum.